I found out that I had a hearing loss at age 19, and it totally changed the way that I think about hearing. Hey guys, Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona, and in this video, I'm talking about the 5 things that every audiologist wants you to know about your hearing. Recently, I was invited to my local Phoenix news station, Channel 3, Arizona's Family, to share what I thought were the top 5 things that audiologists wish that you knew about your ears. And since it was such a popular segment, I felt like I should make a video talking about the same exact things on this channel. Of course, there are way more than just 5 things that we wish that you knew about your hearing, like how humans hear, which I have a 3-minute long 3D animation of, and I will post that link down in the description for you. But in this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 things that I shared in the Channel 3 interview with Jamie Soretta. But before I do me a huge favor, click the like button, really helps out the channel, and if you are not yet subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on, go ahead and do that as well, it's greatly appreciated. And let me know down in the comment section which 5 things that you wish your audiologist knew about your hearing. Okay, so the first thing that you need to know about your hearing is that hearing loss can occur at any age. When I entered the United States Marine Corps at age 19, during boot camp they identified that I had a hearing loss in my right ear. And that hearing loss was significant enough that they recommended that I go and get an MRI to make sure there wasn't a tumor growing on my auditory nerve. Fortunately, it was not a tumor and I was able to serve out the rest of my time in the United States Marine Corps. The point is, many people think that hearing loss only occurs with old age, and while that is common, it's not the only cause of hearing loss. Hearing loss can also be caused by a variety of other things, including genetics, viral attacks, chemical exposure, noise exposure, and even head trauma. If you're over the age of 18 and you cannot remember the last time that you got your hearing tested, it's time to get a hearing test. In a recent meta-analysis, researchers identified that approximately 19% of college students already have a hearing loss. And of course, this prevalence increases if you have a family history of hearing loss, if you've been in a motor vehicle accident, if you've had chemotherapeutic drugs due to cancer, or if you work in a noisy environment. Once you hit the age of 50, you should really be having a hearing test every couple of years, especially if you're noticing a decrease in your hearing or you have the onset of tinnitus, which is the ringing or buzzing sound inside of your ears. Why should you get a hearing test so often? Well, this actually leads into the second thing that you need to know about your hearing, which is the longer you go with a hearing loss, the worse your hearing can become and the more difficult it is to treat. Without fail, it always seems like the individuals who've waited the longest to treat their hearing loss are always the ones who have the worst hearing. Now, it's important to remember that there are multiple ways of measuring different aspects of your hearing, and not all of them are negatively impacted if you don't treat your hearing loss. But I'm going to share all of them with you, and I'm going to point out the specific ones that can decline faster if you wait to treat your hearing. First, you have pure tone air conduction thresholds, which are indicated by the X's and the O's on your audiogram. These are a measure of your middle ear function combined with the outer hair cell function inside of your inner ear. Second, you have your pure tone bone conduction thresholds that are indicated by the angle and square brackets on your audiogram. These directly measure only your outer hair cell function inside of your inner ear. Third, you have word recognition score percentages, which indicate your ability to comprehend speech at an audible level in a quiet environment without visual cues or context. This is a combined measure of your inner hair cell function and your auditory processing abilities. And fourth, you have your speech and noise score, which indicates how much separation of speech you need over the background noise in decibels when presented at a fully audible level. This primarily measures your brain's ability to hear and understand speech in background noise. Now, when an audiologist is talking to you about your hearing loss getting worse if you wait to treat your hearing loss with hearing aids, what they specifically are talking about is your word recognition scores and your speech and noise scores. Why is that? Because both of these are a measure of how your brain actually processes the information that it receives. And if you go through long-term auditory deprivation, essentially your brain starts to struggle with its processing ability. And these word recognition and speech and noise scores are arguably the most important scores on a hearing test because they indicate how much you actually understand when sound is amplified for you with hearing aids, both in quiet environments and noisy environments. So if identifying and then treating your hearing loss sooner than what you would have otherwise can give you a better treatment outcome, it would be a very good idea to get tested earlier and then treated earlier. Of course, this leads us into the third thing that you need to know about your hearing, which is hearing aids alone are not always the answer. Yes, hearing aids are still the best and only treatment for like 90% of cases of hearing loss. However, people still continue to believe, even after watching my YouTube channel for the past 8 or 9 years, that if they get the best hearing aids in the world, that's guaranteed guaranteed to solve their hearing problem. And this could not be further from the truth. The truth is, only hearing aids that have been fit and programmed properly are capable of restoring optimal hearing. And how do you ensure that your hearing aids are fit and programmed properly? Well, you make sure that the fit and programming is verified by your hearing care professional using real ear measurement. Real ear measurement is a verification technique that ensures that the amplification levels that we program into your hearing aids match your hearing loss prescriptive targets. Not only does this allow us to verify that the physical fit of your hearing aids is acoustically appropriate, but it also allows us to take into account the unique size and shape of your ear canals when we're amplifying sound for you. If real ear measurement is not performed when programming your hearing aids, then we have no freaking clue if you're getting the right amount of amplification to restore your ability to hear. Now, maybe you don't care if your hearing aids are actually programmed well, but if you want to make sure that you get the most out of your hearing aids, you have to make sure that you find a hearing care professional who performs real ear measurement, and more importantly, knows what they're doing while they're doing it. Unfortunately, it can be very difficult to find one of these rare providers because there's only about 30% of hearing care professionals who actually perform this verification regularly. But if you want an easy way to find one of them, make sure that you go to my website, hearingup.com, and find a Hearing Up Network member in your area. Hearing Up members are committed to following comprehensive audiologic best practices, including real ear measurement, to ensure that your hearing aids are programmed correctly for you. So if you want to make sure that you can hear your absolute best, finding a Hearing Up Network member in your area is your best bet. Now, if you really do not like the idea of having to treat your hearing loss with hearing aids, then you really better pay attention to this fourth thing that you need to know about your hearing, which is some types of hearing losses are actually preventable. Let's be honest, if your hearing loss is being caused by you getting older, well, there's nothing you can really do to prevent that. However, some hearing losses are preventable, specifically ones that are tied to diabetes, heart conditions, and kidney conditions, all of which can at least somewhat be impacted by diet and exercise. Now, I know that there are those of you out there that there's nothing that you can do. You're either type 1 diabetic or you have some kind of genetic heart condition or kidney condition. You are not the ones that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the individuals who develop these conditions due to poor lifestyle choices. But the most common form of hearing loss that exists out there can actually be prevented, and that's noise-induced hearing loss. And the way that you prevent noise-induced hearing loss is you either avoid going into noisy situations like loud rock concerts, or you wear hearing protection while you're there. Of course, you can get hearing loss from a variety of different noisy environments. You could work a construction job, you could work in a factory, you could mow your lawn for your parents while you're a little kid for hours and hours on end. The most important thing here is that you actually protect your hearing, whether that's with custom earplugs, filtered earplugs, foam earplugs, or over-the-ear earmuffs. This is how I actually prevented my hearing loss in my right ear from getting worse, because I was educated by the military audiologist who identified my hearing loss, and he basically stressed upon me that I had to protect my hearing at all costs. Now, noise-induced hearing loss is the most common and most preventable form of hearing loss, but you can actually prevent some forms of chemical-induced hearing loss. So if you're someone who goes through cancer treatments and they're using chemotherapeutic drugs that are causing high-frequency hearing loss, sometimes you can bring that up to your cancer doctor and they can adjust to a different chemotherapeutic drug that might be less ototoxic. But I always say, the best way to treat your hearing loss is to never develop a hearing loss in the first place. Of course, it is not always possible to prevent hearing loss, and you may already have a hearing loss from those things before you learn any of these things on this video. And if that is the case, then the fifth thing that you need to know about your hearing loss is that untreated hearing loss can lead to higher rates of cognitive decline and a higher risk of dementia later in life. Who knew that hearing loss could actually create accelerated rates of cognitive decline and a higher risk of dementia? Well, it seems like everybody at this point. In fact, even if I get someone who comes into my office who has no understanding about hearing loss, the one thing that they'll happen to have heard of is this link between hearing loss and dementia. Why? Because it seems like everybody is screaming it from the rooftops, myself included. There have been numerous studies that have come out since around 2011 when Dr. Frank Lin out of Johns Hopkins published a study that identified that if you have a mild level hearing loss, you are 2 times more likely to develop dementia. If you have a moderate hearing loss, it's 3 times more likely, and a severe hearing loss, you are 5 times more likely to develop dementia. The Lancet Commission also identified that hearing loss is the leading potentially modifiable risk factor for dementia later in life. More recently, a study called Hearing Loss, Brain Structure, Cognition, and Dementia Risk in the Framingham study that was published in 2025 identified that hearing loss was associated with smaller brain volume, worse cognitive performance, and an increased risk of incident dementia over 15 years. They also identified that hearing aid use reduced the risk of dementia by 71%. Now, if you want a complete breakdown of that entire study, which is one of the most complex studies that I have ever read, I do have a video of that breakdown that I will link in the description for you. Now, I want to be clear here. If you choose to treat your hearing loss right now, it does not guarantee that you will not get dementia in the future. Also, if you choose not to treat your hearing loss right now, it does not guarantee that you will get dementia later in life. However, if the one thing that encourages you to actually make the decision to treat your hearing loss is this fear of dementia, then I say go ahead and treat your hearing loss. And there you go. Those are the 5 things that every audiologist wants you to know about your hearing. Like I mentioned earlier, there are a ton of things that you should really know about your hearing. These are just 5 of the bigger ones. With that said, what are the 5 things that you wish your audiologist knew about your hearing? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video.